everyone. Welcome back to Reclaim You. Emily's here today, and we're going to do some myth busting.
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good. So Emily had a fun idea of doing some myth busting around therapy. I didn't say that well. Th- You say it.
I mean, I feel like that was fine. Yeah, we're gonna bust some therapy myths today.
That's it. That's
Yeah,
it. We're going to bust some therapy myths.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think these are a lot of questions that we get from folks we work with or that we maybe see on the internet and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that some of these are very common things that come up for people in therapy and are things that people feel like they're not allowed to talk to their therapist about. So yeah, let's just get ahead of it.
Totally. I'm with
Yeah,
you. I'm with
yeah.
you.
Let's spill the tea.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Let's spill the tea. It's like we have a pillow in the office that says spill the tea. I love it. It's my
Yeah.
favorite pillow.
Yeah. Oh, I love that pillow too. That's a good
Uh-huh.
one.
Uh-huh.
That's a good
Everyone
one.
should have one. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want that in my house.
Yeah. I know. I know.
Like
A
right
couple
when
of
you
them.
come in the door.
Uh-huh. All right. So first myth, we're going to myth bust. You have to be struggling to go to therapy or have a problem to talk about in every session. Spill the
Hmm.
tea.
Yeah. I think it's a huge block for people who maybe want to go to therapy or could really benefit from therapy. But it's that like, oh, maybe I knew someone who went to therapy and like they had this big thing that they were working through, or like how therapy is represented in the media. It's always this very severe, like time sensitive thing. And I think that people think, oh, well, like the thing that I want to work on isn't like that. So like, should I even go? Am I wasting my time? Am I wasting the therapist's time? No, like therapy is, I think therapy is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many things that we can work on. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it can be, a big trauma or something like that, but it can also be, I mean, it can be so many things. I like can't even think of like one thing because it truly can be anything. And I think that ties into, even in starting therapy or like when people are in therapy and have kind of made progress, it's like, oh, well, like I don't have anything to like fix this session. Well, like that's okay. We can talk about strengths, we can talk about goals, we can talk about things that you've already accomplished. We can brainstorm. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't always have to be something to fix every single time, and that's okay.
Yeah, totally. It feels like the underscore is that if you're suffering, you deserve support, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get clear on your values, you deserve support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. You just deserve support. Like there doesn't have to be a
Asterisk.
qualifier there. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Totally. Totally. So the next myth we have to bust is therapy leads to major insights every session.
Mm. Mhm. That's another big one.
Uh,
That is another big one, and I think that that also comes from, how therapy is often represented. It seems like it's you go in and the therapist, like, drops all this knowledge and these big truth bombs, and it's like, "Oh my god, I never thought about how this thing that happened when I was 5, like, changed the entire course of my life," and that's not how it works. Like, a
uh,
lot of times it's slow work. Like we have to get to know each other. We have to kind of build that relationship. And those big revelations and those big realizations, those are going to come over time. And I actually think that that's more beneficial to kind of do that work slowly so that we don't end up getting overwhelmed, because that's also the last thing that we want to do is like bring a client in, like bring all this stuff up, like dig too deep too fast, and then run the risk of making things much, much worse.
mhm. Yeah.
So, I know it can feel frustrating sometimes of like, why is this work feeling slow? Or like, why is it, I don't come in like and on the first session, like have it all figured out. And I totally get that that's frustrating. And that slow, meaningful work, I think is more impactful and honestly like longer lasting.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I can relate to that in some ways of wanting to just like get to it, like
Mhm.
let's do it. Let's dig in. I mean, from the client side is what I mean. Like I've been dealing
Totally.
this with this for too long. Like, let's just do the thing. And
Mhm.
you're so right, and I tell my clients all the time, there's a reason why we're focusing on like having lots of resources to help you
Mhm.
stay afloat for when we crack the door open to see what's behind there or, where things are rooted in. So you're
Yeah.
right. It's such slow and purposeful work. Like it's all for a
Mhm.
purpose, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think sometimes when it's, a client is coming in, there's something going on, it's like, okay, I want to resolve this as quickly as possible. I think sometimes that also doesn't leave room for that relationship building side of things. And also other things are going to come up week to week. And you're allowed to be like, okay, let's pause on that goal that I came in with. Like maybe I want to talk about how I had a bad week at work or I had a
Mhm.
fight with my partner or like another stressor came up. We're allowed to shift and kind of weave back and forth.
Yeah.
Um and I think sometimes when it's like, oh, like I have to have these like massive insights every session, sometimes we'll neglect bringing up other things that could
Mhm.
be helpful to touch on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of, I'm thinking of like boring self-care, right? How we really
Yeah.
encourage people to engage in boring self-care, things that aren't glamorous and like
Mhm.
manicures and massages and facials and whatever, bubble baths, right? Sure, those
Mhm.
are well and fine if you enjoy those, but the little things like slowing down and
Yeah.
starting to understand what it's like to feel a little bit, right? These are all the little ways to take care of yourself. I'll link to a blog, or I think it was a podcast Casey and I recorded on boring self
Mhm.
care. I can link to that, but it's the same thing of building the safety in the relationship with your therapist, like you said. And
Mhm.
these like little teeny tiny small steps can lead to the bigger
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. And I think it's important for the client and the therapist to remind themselves nobody's doing anything wrong
Yeah.
if there's not these massive breakthroughs every session. The
Hmm.
client's not doing anything wrong. It's just like you were saying, it's slow, purposeful work and there
Hmm.
is they will come, but it
Hmm.
it doesn't happen right away.
And so, in alignment with that is the myth that you're going to make progress. I'm using air quotes, quote unquote, progress super fast. So, it goes hand in hand with that other myth.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think they're almost like one and the same. Progress. I think the true meaningful progress is going to happen slowly over time as you feel comfortable in the therapeutic relationship, and that doesn't that doesn't happen the first session
Yeah, and we
of
have to
that.
flip progress on its head, right? The
Yeah.
idea of like, what is progress? And is progress
Mhm.
related to this pressured kind of hypervigilance of getting it all figured out right now or having the big breakthroughs right now?
Mhm.
How can we track that of what feels pressured, what feels like you have to do, what feels like you have to have the breakthrough, right? And how does that also contribute to the way that you're showing up in the world? Right? It's
Yeah.
like this
Yeah.
trend of go, 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 which our culture promotes when maybe progress is sitting with the discomfort of slowing down, right? Like that can just be progress.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's another really important point is redefining progress because I'm
Mhm.
thinking of anxiety for an example.
Mhm.
Working with clients who have anxiety and I see that they're making progress. Like I see that like the physical symptoms of anxiety are getting better. They're sleeping better. Their appetite is back. They're able to connect with others. But that anxiety is still there because it doesn't necessarily go away to a certain extent. We're gonna have some anxiety like that. That's just how we're built. It's kind of it motivates us, like
Mhm.
there is
Yeah.
some kind of healthy stress and it doesn't
Yeah.
always go away. So it's like, oh, but I still feel anxious or I still feel stressed. And it's like it doesn't have to progress doesn't have to be that symptom completely going away.
It's disappearing forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's here. But I'm managing it.
Or I'm
It's
not
not in
completely
control anymore.
blinded by it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next one we've got, this is a good one. Therapy is just talking or your therapist talking at you. And another way to put it is therapy is just about your therapist giving you advice.
Mhm. Yeah. This is one ugh, this one really gets me.
Uh-huh.
This one really gets me
Uh-huh.
because again, like, I just feel like therapy is just represented in this, like, totally bogus way that's, like, not actually how it works.
Mhm.
And so I get, like, why clients, come in with that expectation. Like, I feel like when I first started doing therapy, like, way back in the day, like, I thought the same thing.
Mhm.
I think it ends up being, like, frustrating for the client and the therapist because, like, on the one hand, the client's like, "Okay, I'm here, like, fix me." And then on the other
Uh-huh.
hand, the therapist is like, "I don't I need a little bit more. What's going on? What's gonna
Uh-huh.
help you? Like, where are
Uh-huh.
you at?" So it
Uh-huh.
kind of I think this one can lead to some awkward situations where you think of people just kind of like sitting and staring at each other, which is not what we want at all.
No, no.
But it's a really collaborative process, I think that I love when clients come in and we get clear about goals, and each week we do a check-in, but then they're like, "You know what? This came up and like this is what I want to work on this week." That's really helpful for me to be like, "Okay, let's talk about it," or like, "Let's bring up some grounding work.
Mhm.
Let's, maybe we're doing some EMDR." Like there's so many different things, but hearing from the client specifically what they're experiencing, what they feel like they're doing well, what they feel like they want to work on is then easy for me to kind of come in with a framework of like, "Okay, let's try this and see how it feels."
Yeah. And I think it's really this process of not imparting our opinions, right? Our opinions of what people should, quote unquote, or shouldn't do, but
Mhm.
supporting clients to come home to what they think and what they feel is right
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, yeah, I mean, I have opinions because I care about people. You
Mhm.
know, I care
Yeah.
about the folks that I work with really deeply. And so, of course, I have opinions, but that's my business, and
Right.
that's why I have like supervision and consultation and peer
Right.
groups and all of the things. It's not my job to impart that onto clients. And sometimes clients directly ask, I want your advice, I want your opinion. And sometimes I'll give it, right?
Mhm.
And lots of times I'll support them in sharing what they hope that I'm going to say because maybe that's really what they want to do or what they need or
Mhm.
whatever it is. So there's so
Mhm.
much nuance to it, but it's not, hey, Emily, I need your advice. Should I break up with this guy? And you're not going to be like, yeah,
Right.
dump his ass, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that too, therapists kind of fall into that like medical professional realm. And I feel like there's a lot of intimidation there sometimes,
Mhm.
like especially with doctors, that it's like, oh, like they're the professional, they're the expert. If they say something that's going to work for me, like obviously that has to work for me, but like everybody's different.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes if someone's had that experience with a therapist where they go in and they're like, do this, this, and this, and then they try it and it doesn't work for them because not everything's going to work for everyone, we're going to feel like we did something wrong. We're going to
Yeah.
feel ashamed. We might drop out of therapy and feel
Uh-huh.
like it was our fault. That's not helpful. That doesn't feel good.
Yeah. It kind of reinforces this yucky kind of hierarchy of power that I
Hmm.
think like inherently can exist in the therapeutic relationship, right? It's important to name that, yeah, you're coming to see a therapist for a service, right? For a relationship, for support, for treatment. And I think us in our practice, we try our best to bring it down to a level playing field of human to human. Sure, we have lots of training and we do lots of
Hmm.
things so that we have a broad skill set to support people. And we really want to make it equal human as much as we can while acknowledging there is some power differential. So we don't want to abuse that by providing
Right.
advice that's going
Right.
to flip you on your head and be like, "Well, you told me," right? But it's not
Mhm.
our life, right? It's not our body, it's not our life. We want you to figure it out
Right.
and support you in doing that
Right. We're kind of here to co-navigate and maybe gently lead at times if that's needed. But
with your
I always
permission,
tell clients
right?
like, right, like I always try to tell clients, no one knows you better than you. I don't know you better than you. Like you're the expert. You know your strengths, you know what you need. Maybe we need to work on getting more in touch with that. But at the end of the day, it's you. Like it needs to come from you.
Yeah. All right. Next one. You're not allowed to give feedback to your therapist.
I think it comes back to that power difference that we just talked about. Like they're the expert. I can't question it. What if they get mad at me? It's really intimidating for sure. And there might be some therapists out there that aren't open to feedback, but I think a good therapist, we welcome feedback. I love when clients come in and are, this thing that we did really helped me, or I tried this thing and it didn't work for me at all, or can we have more structure in a session, or can we have less structure in a session? I love getting that because it helps me make sure that we're using the time in a way that's most beneficial to the client.
Totally. It's reminding me of the podcast recently with Abby about breaking up with your therapist. We talked a lot about this actually, and people pleasing maybe can make it really hard to provide feedback or ask for a different direction or share that maybe needs aren't feeling seen or met, or even like your therapist seems distracted or something like that. But all of these things just feel so important to be able to like repair the relationship so that you don't feel like you have to part ways because it's not working, or you don't feel seen, or you don't feel heard. All of those things. Feedback feels so helpful
Yeah.
because like we also can't read minds.
Right. I was just going to say, we're not mind readers. And going back to that, every client is different. Every client has different needs. We can't go in with like a one size fits all, or like, okay, this is what's going to work for this person. It's always most helpful to hear that directly from them.
Totally. And hopefully the relationship feels safe enough or comfortable enough. Maybe it doesn't feel safe, but maybe comfortable enough that exchange can feel okay. Or an email or a text, right?
I was going to say, yeah, I would not mind that at all. And I tell clients that if there's feedback, if you want to email me between sessions or like text me between sessions and like let me know something that worked, that didn't work, something that you want to hear more of or less of in our next session, like totally do that. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, what about you're not allowed to ask your therapist questions about themselves?
Mm-hmm. Another good one.
Uh huh.
Another good one. And again, that power
Uh
difference,
huh.
I think it comes back to that relationship of like, if it's a professional relationship, you shouldn't ask them questions. And I think vice versa for a lot of therapists. Like I remember when I was in grad school, like my professors kind of like just every single class being like, don't tell your clients anything about you.
Hmm.
If they ask you something, deflect and ask them why they asked you. And like
Uh huh.
that always felt so bad to me. I was
Mm,
like, no,
it's
because
weird. Yeah.
yeah, like it's not about me. I'm not going to show up to the session and be like, oh, this is what happened for me this week, or this is what's happening in my life.
Uh
But I think in that relationship building, clients want to know things about you to feel comfortable with you.
huh.
And I'm not going to deny that or be like, why are you asking me that? Like it's in that situation, like it's a person trying to get to know another person because they're going to be sharing like very intimate parts of their life with them. And I also think especially in this work or really in general, clients want to know that you have experience with what they're going through.
Yeah.
So I always think that that can be a helpful conversation too. Like yes, I have the education, I have the training, but like I also get it because
Mhm.
I've been there. Like I think that those can be really important, really impactful conversations.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it feels important just to say it's not you're logging into session and your therapist is going to be like, well, let me tell you about the argument I had with my partner because man, he
Yeah, no,
sucks, right?
no.
Like,
We
it's
don't
not
wanna do
like,
that.
or, I hear you because let me tell you this crazy story about X, Y, and Z, right? Like, that's not what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
No. No, absolutely not. But if a client, let's say it's like the first session or something, and they're like, you know, tell me about you, like, tell me about your education, or like, what made you want to get into this field? I've had clients ask me if I'm in recovery. I've had clients ask me if I'm married, like things like that. I think that there's a purpose for those questions, and I can see how that's helpful in those moments. So like I'm not a robot. Like I'm gonna
Right.
I'm gonna answer the
Right.
question. That's okay. I think it
Totally.
helps the relationship as long as, like you were saying, it doesn't become the therapist using
Venting
the
session.
session for their own therapy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Like we have our own therapist for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And also, just to point out too that a lot of the relationships that we have with folks are really long term. So I know for me, many of my clients have seen me through both of my pregnancies and, you know, have seen pictures of my children, things like that. So, like, it does become a really kind of
Mhm.
sacred relationship where I think there is this sharing of parts of ourselves and parts of our experiences with consent, of course, but it just makes it so much more human because, if you hear my kids screaming on the other side of this wall and I'm like, do, 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 nothing's happening. This isn't impacting me at all, right? Like that's robotic. That's not human.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do one more. Your therapist has it all together.
Ooh,
Uh-huh.
I feel like that's a good one to end on. We do
Uh-huh.
not.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
short answer, we do not,
And
because
cut.
we are humans. Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's all I got. No, we are humans. We're not robots. And I think a lot of times, at least most people that I've met in this field, we get into this field for a reason. And a lot of times we get into this field because we've also dealt with our own struggles with mental health, whether it's an eating disorder, anxiety, depression, addiction, anything really. We get into this field because we know how hard it is and we want to help people. So this idea that therapists are these like pictures of mental health, no one is. We all
Yeah.
have our struggles. We've just gone to school and hopefully have done our own therapy and
Uh-huh.
know some things that are helpful in starting to take the power back from some of these struggles.
Yeah, something that I think is really cool about our practice as a little plug. I always say this too is that we're just not people who are talking the talk, right? The clinicians on this team are also walking the walk, whether that's in recovery from an eating disorder or trauma or both, anxiety, people pleasing. I mean, we talk about people pleasing a lot, perfectionism, right? Like these are things that, we do this work for a reason. Like you said, people come into this work for a reason. And we've done a lot of work, each of us, and continue to do a lot of work. So we're still maybe a little unhinged, but also are like on the path, we're on the
Yeah,
path.
yeah, absolutely. And we
Mhm.
also just like live normal lives, outside of mental health struggles. Stressors are going to come up. We're also going to have conflict in relationships. Like, we're going to have family things that come up. We're going to get sick. Like, we're going to have all the normal stressors that everybody else deals with too. And just because we're therapists doesn't mean that those things just like don't get to us. They do.
They do.
Again, because we're just normal people.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which again
Yeah.
is why we have our own therapists and consultants
Yeah.
and supervisors
Totally.
and right,
Totally.
like these layers of support
Yeah.
to help us navigate it all.
But I think I know personally, and this is even tying in with like sometimes like purposely like sharing. I I appreciate when a therapist that I'm working with tells me like I've been through something similar or I've had similar struggles. I feel like it normalizes the work, but then it also normalizes that like the work kind of ebbs and flows. There's
Mhm,
going to be easier times, there's going to be harder times, and that's
mhm,
okay.
mhm.
That's normal.
Totally. And to add to that too is that it's our job as the therapist or our therapist's job to manage any what we call countertransference, right? To acknowledge when, when things are seeping through the screen or across the room. It's our job to seek support, and navigating that is never our client's job to take care of that. Like, we can repair it relationally together, but it's our jobs to figure that out outside a session,
Totally.
and to repair in session.
Totally.
All right, those are some good ones. We do have a few more, so we could do a part 2.
Yeah.
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 Anything to add before we go?
I think those were some really good ones. I'm glad we got through all those, and I hope this is a helpful episode. And if it is, yeah, let's do part 2.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Shoot us a message or an email. Yeah, we can do the rest. There's a handful more that we have that we didn't really have time for. But yeah. Well, thanks, Emily. This was a great idea.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. We will be back next week for another episode. And until then, take good care.